How are we all? It is another rainy day, but it is pleasant in my conservatory. It's not cold, and it's nice to see the raindrops above me. So I thought I'll indulge in a bit of Dickens and continue where we left off. What do you think? I think the light's going to be steady, I'm pretty sure. Anyway. How are we all keeping? Keeping well, are we? I do thank you for everyone who's been joining me for my lives. I've been trying to do live streams more frequently lately and make the most of my beautiful surrounds in Ireland when I'm out and about doing comedy or just going for a drive. It's like like the other day I just went out for an ice cream and showed you the cultural icon that is a 99 ice cream on a summer's day in Ireland. And of course, from time to time, over the last 3 years or so, I've been reading Charles Dickens's Great Expectations whenever the mood takes me. So I do thank you for those who join me for a bit of literature, no matter where in the world you might hail from. I do appreciate the support. Thank you to all of my members. I've got quite a few members now who help keep my channel going, and of course you get special benefits if you are a member of my channel. There are some of my videos that are members only, and there'll be more members only content in the future. I'm going to make a few more videos in the near future that after a couple of weeks I'm going to make members only. So if you're a member, you get to keep watching them, and if not, you'll just have to stick to the free videos. There are many of them on my channel. Now, for those of you who are new here, Fulcher is Irish for welcome. I am a comedian, I'm a writer, a broadcaster. My name is Mama Duck. I was born in Australia and I lived there most of my life, but for the last decade I have been living in Ireland, which is where I perform my stand-up comedy, and I've been in a few independent films and music videos and things since then, and I'm very, very grateful indeed to be part of the Irish cultural scene, as well as just the benefits of living in one of the last few countries where Western democracy is still holding, thankfully. So I, as I say, I'm a comedian. I was born in Australia, but I live in Ireland. So my channel has lots of videos of me travelling around the island of Ireland and travelling backwards and forwards between Ireland and Australia. Earlier this year I went to Texas, so you can check out the video I did when going over to Texas. I went to Rodeo Houston, which was amazing, and I would very much like to go back next year. I really hope that I will. I'm planning on it, and if I'm lucky, I'll get to do a bit more live coverage from Rodeo Houston. Anyway, without any further ado, if you're all wondering why sometimes when I'm reading great literature or podcasting, I do it when dressed somewhat scantily, as our grandmother's generation would say, it is because I am part of the body positive movement. And the reason I am part of the body positive movement is I have lipedema. And June is Lipedema Awareness Month. So, when you see my arms, as Kath and Kim in that Australian comedy series call them, Fadubitas, because it's all about the body shaming in Australia. In Australia, the societal culture for my entire life, and I'm now 55, nearly, has been you can't be too thin or too rich. the old famous Hollywood saying. So, you know, it's because it's very hot and people spend a lot of their times without any clothes on playing sports or going to the beach or, you know, even just working on a farm. You know, you'll be doing it in shorts and a t-shirt or whatever because it's so bloody hot. In fact, I remember when I was 17, when I was a 17-year-old teenager, I was working in the orchard in summer, 40-degree heat. Well, 30-degree heat in those days. It was considerably cooler. 30-degree heat in those days, working in an orchard, and I was doing it in my bathers to get a suntan. You know, and now at age 55 in Ireland, I'm constantly checking to see if I've got anything nasty occurring as a result. So yeah, so being thin and tan and sporty in Australia was very much, you know, what everyone wanted everyone else to be for most of my life. And since I was not that, because I have lipedema, which is a condition that cannot be resolved by diet or exercise. It's just my body makes extra tissue that looks like fat, but it's actually like fibrotic tissue. And it's genetic, it's inherited, it's triggered by hormonal events like puberty, contraceptive pills. It's very estrogen based, so like my lipedema escalated wildly and dramatically when I was 26 because I had the Depo-Provera injection, which was basically 6 months worth of the contraceptive pill injected into me, and I just inflated like a bouncy castle. It was just beyond horrible to suddenly be a prisoner in your own body, like being stuck inside a sumo suit that was stitched on. Really awful. But no one knew what lipedema was in those days. So all the doctors would just say, "Well, go away and lose some weight, and then we'll go away and lose some weight, go away and lose some weight." And you'd say, "Well, I haven't been eating anything all this week," and they'd just stare at you and they wouldn't believe you. But anyway, I'm now recovering from all that, you might say, recovering from the body shame and reclaiming my space, not just for me, but for everyone who is curvy, whatever your persuasion might be. If you are plus size, whether it is, genetic, whether it is lipedema, or for whatever reason, you have as much right to exist as anyone else, and your weight is your business, basically. So as I say, it's not that I enjoy lipedema. I certainly do not. It's not even about the way it looks. It's painful and it's heavy, and it inhibits mobility and all the things that I love doing. So, but there's no cure other than like radical liposuction. I've had 3 operations already. Can't afford any more. So I'm stuck in what I've got to live with for hopefully at least another 3 decades. God willing, as I say here. Alright, so that's me. I'm a body positive Aussie comedian who lives in Ireland and occasionally reads Great Expectations aloud and not very many clothes at all. Vive la différence. Thank you all for listening and watching, etc. Alright, Great Expectations, chapter 34. As I had grown accustomed to my expectations, I had insensibly begun to notice their effect upon myself and those around me. Their influence on my own character I disguised from my recognition as much as possible, but I knew very well that it was not all good. I lived in a state of chronic uneasiness respecting my behaviour to Joe. My conscience was not by any means comfortable about Biddy. When I woke up in the night, like Camilla, I used to think, with the weariness of my spirits, that I should have been happier and better if I had never seen Miss Havisham's face, and had risen to manhood content to be partners with Joe in the honest old forge. Many a time of an evening, when I sat alone looking at the fire, I thought, after all, there was no fire like the forge fire and the kitchen fire at home. Yet Estella was so inseparable from all my restlessness and disquiet of mind that I really fell into confusion as to the limits of my own part in its production. That is to say, Supposing I had no expectations, and yet had had Estella to think of, I could not make out to my satisfaction that I should have done much better. Now, concerning the influence of my position on others, I was in no such difficulty, and so I perceived, though dimly enough perhaps, that it was not beneficial to anybody, and above all, that it was not beneficial to Herbert. My lavish habits led his easy nature in expenses that he could not afford, corrupted the simplicity of his life, and disturbed his peace with anxieties and regrets. I was not at all remorseful for having unwittingly set those other branches of the Pocket family to the poor arts they practised, because such littlenesses were their natural bent, and would have been evoked by anybody else if I had left them slumbering. But Herbert's was a very different case, and it often caused me a twinge to think that I had done him evil service in crowding his sparely furnished chambers with incongruous upholstery work and placing the canary-breasted Avenger at his disposal. So now, as an infallible way of making little ease great ease, I began to contract a quantity of debt. I could hardly begin, but Herbert must begin too, so he soon followed. At Startop's suggestion, we put ourselves down for election into a club called the Finches of the Grove, the object of which institution I have never divined, if it were not that the members should dine expensively once a fortnight, to quarrel among themselves as much as possible after dinner, and to cause 6 waiters to get drunk on the stairs. I know that these gratifying social ends were so invariably accomplished that Herbert and I understood nothing else to be referred to in the first standing toast of the society, which ran, "Gentlemen, may the present promotion of good feeling ever reign predominant among the Finches of the Grove." The Finches spent their money foolishly. The hotel we dined at was in Covent Garden, and the first Finch I saw when I had the honour of joining the Grove was Bentley Drummle, at that time floundering about town in a cab of his own, and doing a great deal of damage to the posts at the street corners. Occasionally he shot himself out of his equipage head foremost over the apron, and I saw him on one occasion deliver himself at the door of the Grove in this unintentional way, like coals. But here I anticipate a little, for I was not a Finch, and could not be, according to the sacred laws of society, until I came of age. In my confidence in my own resources, I would willingly have taken Herbert's expenses on myself, but Herbert was proud, and I could make no such proposal to him. So he got into difficulties in every direction, and continued to look about him. When we gradually fell into keeping late hours and late company, I noticed that he looked about him with a desponding eye at breakfast time, that he began to look about him more hopefully about midday, that he drooped when he came into dinner, that he seemed to descry capital in the distance rather clearly after dinner, that he all but realized capital towards midnight, and that about 2 o'clock in the morning he began so deeply despondent again as to talk of buying a rifle and going to America with the general purpose of compelling buffaloes to make his fortune. I was usually at Hammersmith about half the week, and when I was at Hammersmith I haunted Richmond, whereof separately by and by. Herbert would often come to Hammersmith when I was there, and I think at those seasons his father would occasionally have some passing perception that the opening he was looking for had not appeared yet. But in the general tumbling up of the family, his tumbling out in life somewhere was a thing to transact itself somehow. In the meantime, Mr. Pocket grew greyer, and tried oftener to lift himself out of his perplexities by the hair. While Mrs. Pocket tripped up the family with her footstool, read her book of dignities, lost her pocket-handkerchief, told us about her grandpapa, and taught the young idea how to shoot by shooting into bed whenever it attracted her notice. As I am now generalizing a period of my life with the object of clearing my way before me, I can scarcely do so better than by at once completing the description of our usual manners and customs at Barnard's Inn. We spent as much money as we could, and got as little for it as people could make up their minds to give us. We were always more or less miserable, and most of our acquaintances were in the same condition. There was a gay fiction among us that we would constantly enjoy ourselves, and a skeleton truth that we never did. To the best of my belief, our case was in the last aspect a rather common one. Every morning, with an air ever new, Herbert went into the city to look about him. I often paid him a visit in the dark back room, in which he consorted with an ink jar, a hat peg, a coal box, a string box, an almanac, a desk and stool, and a ruler, and I do not remember that I ever saw him do anything else but look about him. If we all did what we undertake to do, as faithfully as Herbert did, we might live in a republic of the virtues. He had nothing else to do, poor fellow, except at a certain hour of every afternoon to go to Lloyd's, in observance of a ceremony of seeing his principal, I think. He never did anything else in connection with Lloyd's that I could find out, except come back again. When he felt his case unusually serious, and that he positively must find an opening, he would go on, change at a busy time, and walk in and out in a kind of gloomy country dance figure among the assembled magnates. For, says Herbert to me, coming home to dinner on one of these special occasions, I find the truth to be, Handel, that an opening won't come to one, but one must go to it. So I have been. If we had been less attached to one another, I think we must have hated one another regularly every morning. I detested the Chambers beyond expression at that period of repentance, and could not endure the sight of the Avenger's livery, which had a more expensive and a less remunerative appearance then than at any other time in the 24 hours. As we got more and more into debt, breakfast became a hollower and hollower form, and being on one occasion at breakfast time threatened, by letter, with legal proceedings, not wholly unconnected, as my local paper might put it, with jewellery, I went so far as to seize the Avenger by his blue collar and shake him off his feet, so that he was actually in the air, like a booted Cupid, for presuming to suppose that we wanted a roll. At certain times, meaning at uncertain times, for they depended on our humour, I would say to Herbert, as if it were a remarkable discovery, "My dear Herbert, we are getting on badly." "My dear Handel," Herbert would say to me in all sincerity, "if you will believe me, those very words were on my lips by a strange coincidence." "Then, Herbert," I would respond, "let us look into our affairs." We always derived profound satisfaction from making an appointment for this purpose. I always thought this was business, this was the way to confront the thing, this was the way to take the foe by the throat, and I know Herbert thought so too. We ordered something rather special for dinner, with a bottle of something similarly out of the common way, in order that our minds might be fortified for the occasion, and we might come well up to the mark. Dinner over, we produced a bundle of pens, a copious supply of ink, and a goodly show of writing and blotting paper. For there was something very comfortable in having plenty of stationery. I would then take a sheet of paper and write across the top of it in a neat hand the heading, "Memorandum of Pip's Debts," with Bernard's Inn and the date very carefully added. Herbert would also take a sheet of paper and write across it with similar formalities, "Memorandum of Herbert's Debts." Each of us would then refer to a confused heap of papers at his side, which had been thrown into drawers, worn into holes and pockets, half burnt in lighting candles, stuck for weeks into the looking-glass, and otherwise damaged. The sound of our pens going refreshed us exceedingly, insomuch that I sometimes found it difficult to distinguish between this edifying business proceeding and actually paying them money. In point of meritorious character, the two things seemed about equal. When we had written a little while, I would ask Herbert how he got on. Herbert probably would have been scratching his head in a most rueful manner at the sight of his accumulating figures. "They are mounting up, Handel," Herbert would say. "Upon my life, they are mounting up." "Be firm, Herbert," I would retort, plying my own pen with great assiduity. Assiduity? "Look the thing in the face. Look into your affairs. Stare them out of countenance." So I would, Handel, only they are staring me out of countenance. However, my determined manner would have its effect, and Herbert would fall to work again. After a time he would give up once more, on the plea that he had not got Cobb's bill, or Lob's, or Nob's, as the case might be. Then Herbert estimate in round numbers, and put it down. "What a fellow of resource you are," my friend would reply with admiration. "Really, your business powers are very remarkable." I thought so too. I established with myself on these occasions a reputation of a first-rate man of business, prompt, decisive, energetic, clear, cool-headed. When I had got all my responsibilities down upon my list, I compared each with the bill and ticked it off. My self-approval when I ticked an entry was quite a luxurious sensation. When I had no more ticks to make, I folded all my bills up uniformly, docketed each on the back, and tied the whole into a symmetrical bundle. Then I did the same for Herbert, who modestly said he had not my administrative genius, and felt that I brought his affairs into a focus for him. My business habits had one other bright feature, which I called leaving a margin. For example, supposing Herbert's debts to be £164 4 and twopence, I would say, leave a margin and put them down at 200. Or supposing my own to be 4 times as much, I would leave a margin and put them down at 700. I had the highest opinion of the wisdom of the same margin, but I am bound to acknowledge that on looking back I deemed it to have been an expensive device. For we always ran into new debt immediately, to the full extent of the margin, and sometimes, in the sense of freedom and solvency and departed, got pretty far on into another margin. But there was a calm, a rest, a virtuous hush consequent on these examinations of our affairs that gave me, for the time, an admirable opinion of myself. Soothed by my exertions, my method, and Herbert's compliments, I would sit with his symmetrical bundle and my own on the table before me among the stationery, and feel like a bank of some sort, rather than a private individual. We shut our outer door on these solemn occasions in order that we might not be interrupted. I had fallen into my serene state one evening when we had heard a letter dropped through the slit in the said door and fall on the ground. "It's for you, Handel," said Herbert, going out and coming back with it. "And I hope there's nothing the matter." This was an allusion to its heavy black seal and border. The letter was signed Trabb and Co., and its contents were simply that I was an honoured sir, and that they begged to inform me that Mrs. J. Gargery had departed this life on Monday last at 20 minutes past 6 in the evening, and that my attendance was requested at the interment on Monday next at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And that was Great Expectations, chapter 34. There we go. So, thank you all awfully for listening and for watching to Charles Dickens and for sticking around and listening to me. As I said, June is Lipedema Awareness Month, so look out for more videos from me on the subject of lipedema awareness. Thank you everyone who has subscribed and who likes and shares. Please click the bell for all the notifications. Consider being a member if you will, and I'll see you when you got nothing on.